Support for this program is provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.
Hello and welcome to Louisiana Public Square. I'm Beth Courtney, President of Louisiana Public Broadcasting.
And I'm Shauna Sanford, anchor and reporter for LPB. Tonight we come to you from the Julian Poydras Center in the city of New Roads, a community that has seen firsthand the tragic consequences of our topic for this evening, bullying. 17-year-old Tisha Middlebrook took her life earlier this year at Point Coupee Central High School, a victim, friends and family say, of repeated bullying.
Unfortunately, Point Coupee Parish is not alone in this crisis. Two other recent high-profile suicides have been linked to bullying in Bossier and Calcasieu parishes. National statistics indicate 1 in 3 students are bullied during their school career, and 160,000 miss school at least one day each year to avoid their tormentors. Over the next hour, we'll be exploring what Louisiana is doing to address bullying in the state and how teachers, parents, and students can stand up to this aggressive behavior. Lynn Pauley of Lake Charles can't forget October 25th, 2011. It was the night he discovered his daughter Hannah had done the unimaginable.
I went out to eat with a friend of mine, and I got home about 9:30 to 9:45 that evening, and I had gone into my bedroom to use the restroom, and I noticed my drawer where I kept my pistol for protection was open. And I walked upstairs, and she was in her room laying on the floor with a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
For the parents of Danielle Cox, the unthinkable happened May 20th, 2011, when the Parkway High School student took her own life in Bossier City. And on March 2nd, 2012, Tisha Middlebrook hanged herself from the football stands at Point Coupee Central High School. The families of all 3 girls maintained their teens were bullied by their fellow students. Polly says of Hannah,
I think the verbal abuse was just the final tack to push her over the edge. The sheriff's office here did an investigation, and in their investigation they didn't find anything. But do I believe it was happening? Absolutely.
In 2001, in response to the Columbine shooting incident carried out by 2 bullied students, Louisiana lawmakers passed legislation requiring schools under the jurisdiction of the Department of Ed to adopt written policies prohibiting bullying. The law created several loopholes, though, including exempting 6 parishes. In 2010, the legislature passed HB 1259, creating the crime of cyberbullying. Although not specific to the school setting, the definition applied to the abuse, torment, or intimidation of persons under the age of 18 through electronic means. In the most recent legislative session, lawmakers considered 8 anti-bullying measures. One of those was sponsored by State Senator Rick Ward, who represents Point Coupee Parish, where Tisha Middlebrook lived.
I thought something needed to be done to address the problem and make sure that there was a process in place if somebody was facing issues, bullying issues, that everyone involved knew exactly what needed to take place to help out the situation.
Ward authored the Tisha Middlebrook Anti-Bullying Act, which takes effect this school year. The legislation requires every public school to notify parents and students that bullying is prohibited and to provide annual training on intervention for school employees, including bus drivers. Act 861 also requires school principals to investigate accusations of bullying beginning the very next school day. If no action is taken, then complaints move up to the local school board, which must also start an investigation the following day. Ward says imposing the time limit was crucial.
We wanted something immediate, that the situation can be addressed. If it's investigated and it's found nothing's there, they can move forward. If it's investigated and there's found to be some bullying action, the proper steps can be taken place.
On the one hand, we do understand the impact that bullying has on children. We want all of our kids to have a healthy experience while they're in our schools. On the other hand, we don't want the legislature or legislation to put us in a no-win position.
Des Moines Rutledge is the general counsel for the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. He is concerned with school districts being able to faithfully comply with what he sees as the bill's overly broad definition of bullying.
It clearly says that bullying is defined as gestures, including but not limited to obscene gestures, as well as making faces. So if you took that to its logical extension, sticking your tongue out at a kid repeatedly could be defined as bullying.
Rutledge preferred an anti-bullying bill proposed by Representative Patricia Haynes Smith. Representative Smith's bill enumerated the possible motivations behind prohibited harassment, including race, ancestry, disabilities, religion, and sexual orientation. Objections from the conservative Christian organization Louisiana Family Forum were a catalyst for getting that language stripped from the bill, at which point Smith withdrew the measure.
Thank you.
Representative Smith's bill, which was not enacted, touched upon the same basic principles that Act 861 touched upon. The difference, in my opinion, is Act 861 is far more prescriptive in terms of chapter and verse.
Criticism has also been raised about the requirement that school districts help move a victim of bullying to another school if problems persist, leaving the bully in place. Lynn Pauley says he tried that for Hannah, taking her out of Barb High School after her freshman year and enrolling her at St. Louis Catholic School.
Unfortunately, the bullying followed her, whether it through other friends that were friends from St. Louis.
And we want to thank Sue Lincoln with the Southern Ed Desk for helping us put that package together. We are looking forward to a very informative discussion tonight. And so as we get started, I'm going to take a few moments to introduce you to our panelists. We have with us Mr. Lynn Pauley. He is the father of a Lake Charles student, Hannah Pauley. You just saw him in that story. Her suicide was linked to bullying. He has established the Hannah Pauley Foundation to assist children in getting counseling to avoid further tragedies. Dr. Angela Lee Domain is the principal of Bel Air High School in Baton Rouge. She has 21 years of experience in the state public school system. She has worked as a high school teacher, an assistant superintendent, and a principal. Senator Rick Ward is a Democrat from Port Allen. He successfully sponsored the Tisha Middlebrook Anti-Bullying Act during the 2012 legislative session. Daniel Banguel is a self-admitted former bully who has become an anti-bullying advocate. He is a nationally recognized motivational speaker, and he takes his message to schools and to community outreach events. And Dr. Donald Hoppy is a clinical psychologist who has been in practice for 30 years. He's given numerous presentations on bullying prevention to both state and national groups. Welcome all of you. It is wonderful to have you here tonight. And so before we go to our audience, I want to begin with a few brief comments from each of you. Mr. Pauley, I will start with you. We saw your story there. You shared it, the story of your daughter. Did you have any idea of just how tormented she was?
I really didn't. She obviously wore such a great mask. I think that so many kids are scared nowadays to show that fear because they're going to get just tormented even that much more. Or if they do say something and nothing's taken place, then they're going to get bullied that much more. So I think they just try to hold it in more, and then they're walking time bombs. And honestly, I never saw it.
You never saw it coming?
No, ma'am. There was a smile on that little girl's face every day of her life, whether she was in trouble with me or not. I mean, you just never saw it at all.
Dr. Domain, I'd like to ask you.
Available to them there at the school site. Are these resources exhaustive? No. I don't know that we ever will have everything that we need to meet every need of every child, but can we be effective if we use what we have wisely? Yes.
You mentioned that legislation, and that legislation was crafted by you, Senator Ward. Tell me, it has reached epidemic proportions, it seems. Is it getting worse, or are we just more aware of it?
I think it's getting worse in the sense that years back, before cell phones, text messages, Facebook, Twitter, when they went home at the end of the day, that was the end of it. Now it continues 24 hours a day, whether it be the text bomb that was talked about in the previous video, or Facebook or Twitter. It never stops. It's a continual thing, and so it's more difficult on the children because they feel like they can't ever escape that particular, whatever it may be, whatever the bullying may be.
Well, sitting next to you is a gentleman who says that he is a reformed bully. Mr. Banguel, why did you do it?
In high school, again, I don't think that at the time it was nationally recognized as bullying. I mean, it was definitely hard to determine bullying in high school because we both going through a lot of adolescent ages where we are going through puberty, and just going through that particular life, you're gonna see some kids gesture to other kids, you know. And again, it's such an epidemic now that it's now nationally recognized as, of course, you see a lot of suicidal attempts and people actually taking their lives from it. But then when I was in high school, it wasn't something that I, initially tried to do. And I don't think the intent was there in high school during the time that I came about. But now that we are definitely seeing it, something that we're actually looking into.
So we definitely know a lot more about it now than we did in years past. Dr. Hoppy, what can you tell us about what happens to these bullies as they grow up and become adults?
Bullies don't stop being bullies. Without an intervention, bullies continue to bully. Kids who bully become adults who bully. They bully at work. Excuse me, they bully their spouses, they bully their children, they beget other bullies. There's also some very startling statistics which suggest that 40 to 60% of bullies who are unchecked will have run-ins with the law by the time they're in their mid-20s.
That is very startling, and I know that we have an audience here that is very eager to get in on the conversation, and so we're going to go to Beth Courtney. Beth?
Thank you, Shauna. We have with us a high school leader, Monique Claiborne. Monique, where are you from?
Opelousas, Louisiana.
Well, you have a question for one of our panelists.
My question is directed to Dr. Hoppy. Are you aware of any movements among psychologists to work with the actual bullies and understand their mindset, where they're coming from, because so often they bully out of anger and other issues at home?
People who work with children and work with schools in this area are really focused on both the victims and the bullies. We probably have focused on the victims more than the bullies, but there is a trend now to look more at what motivates the bullies. Bullying is characterized by a differential in power. The bottom line with a bully is that he or she is exerting their power over another individual and rendering the other individual vulnerable or powerless. There is an old wives' tale that bullies themselves have low self-esteem and that they feel bad, they're depressed. Sometimes that's true, but many times we now know it's not true. That these are kids who are power happy, they're control freaks, they want to be in charge, they want to be the center of attention. So sometimes what motivates the bully is very different from what we once thought. Bullies are also egged on by peer pressure. Often it's the kids who stand around and do nothing or who giggle and snicker that the bully is fed by. And so that we're beginning to understand more and more, and intervention really needs to take place not just with the victims, but with the bullies, and more than anything, with everybody else as well.
Monique, have you seen bullying in your high school?
Yes, I have, most frequently working as a coach with a basketball camp. I work with 1st through 9th graders, and it's a 4-day camp, but every day we have so many fights. We're breaking up. It's the little kids on little kids. Sometimes it's the older kids picking with the little kids. I see it all the time.
All right, does this fit into what you observe as well, Dr. Hoppy?
Yeah, anytime kids are together, there's that potential. Well, anytime anybody's together, because adults bully as well. Bullying seems to begin in the elementary years. It really peaks in middle school. It peaks in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, really reaches its height at that point, and little by little begins to diminish, usually through the high school years with increased maturity. But 60% of kids report that they're seeing bullying almost every day in some situation. And the vast majority of bullying is taking place in school and school-related activities, because that's when kids are clustered together. So yeah, that's consistent with what we see.
Thank you for your question.
And we have another question here. Give us your name and tell us where you're from.
I'm Clay Parker from Hammond, Louisiana. And my question is directed towards Senator Ward. Will your bill affect the criminal prosecution of bullies, and if so, how drastically?
It will not affect the criminal portion for children. What it does, it gives the teachers or the instructors, whether it be the principals, anyone in authority in the school system, some outlines as far as what exactly is bullying and what steps they need to do to take, or what steps should take place once it's reported. And that way a school can get that kid, whether it be moved to another school or just taken out of the situation. We needed some steps to put in place to do that. But we wanted to stay away from the criminal side of things because that gets into a whole different set of circumstances that may need to be visited another time.
I want to ask you, at the time that you brought this bill forward, there was already an anti-bullying law on the books. Why was this necessary?
I think this just went a little deeper. It gave a better definition, a more specific definition of bullying. What was on the books, and I'm not sure, you may be referring to the cyberbullying bill, but it wasn't specific enough. That was the complaints that we were getting, or that I was getting, was that the school systems didn't necessarily react in a timely manner. Not all school systems, but in some of the instances that were seen, that was some of the complaints. And so we wanted to address that and give everyone involved appropriate action that they could take.
Well, I'd like to ask Dr. Domain, does it define bullying for teachers and for principals? Is that definition a good definition? Is it helpful?
It provides very specific guidance on how to identify bullying, whether it is through language that is derogatory or demeaning, or leads to another student's feeling intimidated or threatened. It also contains language related to gestures that may be perceived as threatening. So it's very illustrative in describing what bullying what it looks like.
And prior to that, you didn't have that. It wasn't as defined.
I think prior to that, there was more subjectivity. Some may argue that there is still some level of subjectivity, but the law specifically states, again, that if it leads, whether it's a gesture or whether it's words, if it leads to a student's feeling intimidated or harassed or threatened, then this is something that needs to be investigated. This act needs to be investigated.
Okay, all right. Beth?
Well, I have a very close friend, relative of one of the victims. Tisha, tell us your name.
James Joseph.
And James, you have a particular feeling of something that needs to be done that you're working on that could have perhaps helped Tisha.
Yes, we are starting a program called Enough is Enough, Point Men Against Bullying.
Why do you think there aren't enough men involved in this? What's the point of this?
Well, in the school system, I know Ms. Domain, there's not a lot of men in the school system. There's a lot of females. I don't have anything against females, but I think in the educational high school area, they need more men in the school system. So we're gonna start patrolling some of these schools and just going around, just talking to these guys to see what's going on. We're not being a policeman or anything like that. We're just going into schools just to talk and see what's going on in these inner city kids' life.
So perhaps do you have a question for one of our panelists?
Yes, I do. You guys have all types of laws against fighting in school, stealing, bringing guns, and all this other stuff in schools, which I respect that. I don't understand why this guy had to move his daughter to another school because of someone bullying her the whole time. Why are we running? These guys are in schools now, and they're making threats, and there's nothing being done. I mean, you suspend someone for fighting. Why can't you suspend somebody for bullying someone? I think the laws are there, but they're not exactly what they need to be there for. If somebody is being bullied and they go to the principal and tell them, look, I'm tired and this guy is constantly harassing me, something needs to be done on the spot. Maybe suspend them for 3 days. Get their parents involved. We got to start doing stuff now, not later. And I think this guy, he shouldn't even have to move his daughter at all. I mean, she's not doing anything. but the bully's still there, and he's going to constantly bully until we put a stop to him. So like I said, you guys got zero tolerance, zero violence in schools. Shouldn't one of the things be bullying?
So Mr. Pauly, maybe you want to respond.
I totally agree. The transfer from one school to the next isn't going to stop the bullying. It followed her. It followed her through the cyberbullying. It followed her through the cell phones and the text messaging. And unfortunately, I don't believe that we're attacking the right form of removing the bully. I'm with you. Why is this kid allowed to stay at that school? Why does somebody have to run? You know, if my daughter's in school to get her education, to do whatever she wants to, or to graduate high school, to go on to college, but yet she's having to run because nothing is taken care of. I brought this point up earlier while we were all talking. I agree. We'll arrest someone for fighting, but we won't arrest someone who's putting permanent marks on the heart of a child who eventually takes their life, because this is continuously going on. It is getting worse and worse by the day. And let me tell y'all something. It isn't just the kids. I would be willing to bet it's 50-50 on the adults, teachers, as much as the students. The students go to the principal, and the principal in turn says, no, that teacher wouldn't do that. I've been with them 20 years. So is it going to take 10, 15 students being bullied by that principal's staff before something's done to that teacher? You can't fire a 10-year teacher, and I believe that's my impression. So you can suspend or expel a student for bullying, but nothing's going to take place to the adult. And we're supposed to be the adults who are supposed to fix these problems, but yet in some of these schools, it is actually the teachers that are inflicting the bullying upon the students.
Well, Mr. Banguel, you look like you want to jump in. Would well, a gentleman of this size telling you better stop would probably have an impact on you when you were a bully, right?
Well, no.
No.
Well, what I want to say is that, and I listen to the different bills and stuff like that, and it seems like they have a system where they're taking the kids out. And if you take a child out of an environment, it doesn't change the bullying, okay? There needs some type of intervention program that needs to be established in the school system, because if I don't know I'm bullying somebody and you take your daughter out or you take your son out, that doesn't stop me from bullying at that school or going to another school. There's nothing that I read in the bill, and of course I hadn't saw the revised bill that Senator Ward did, but the first one, it didn't speculate any type of intervention program. Because once you identify the bullying, you want to definitely intervene. Then, hey, there's some type of programs initiated in the school system where that particular student can identify they're being bullied and find ways to stop doing it. You know, and that's not in it. You know, us being children, us being teenagers, we're distracted. You know, we may remember something this week, by Friday, our mind's on something else. And, you know, 3 days or 5 days being suspended doesn't stop anything. It's not going to stop you from bullying anybody. It's not going to stop you from fighting anybody. But once we implement programs inside the school system to be more proactive rather than reactive to situations, then maybe we can get something accomplished.
Well, I believe that if you start doing something, instead of just saying you're going to do it, things will take place. My daughter shouldn't have to die because somebody just wanted to go over there and bully, and he goes home for the weekend. Start taking action on those kids as you do the ones that fight. I'd rather my kid get punched than continuously have somebody demoralize her to come home and do what she did. So start now. Take action now.
We need to protect the victims first and foremost, and that's where moving the child comes in. Then we need to intervene, and the bullies need consequences. But as has been pointed out, that's not going to be the end of the problem. What needs to be addressed is the culture of bullying that we have in our schools. That needs to be addressed. It's a system-wide problem, and I don't think there's enough being done to address from day one with these kids when they walk into school the issues that underlie bullying. We need to develop a culture of tolerance and of mutual respect and of recognition and celebration of differences rather than the kind of negativity that exists in some of our schools and the my way or no way and I'm right and you're wrong. There doesn't have to be good guys and bad guys. And that needs to start on day one. That's the culture that supports this. That's the culture in our schools, and perhaps it's the culture in our country right now. And if we don't start working on that level, this problem is not going to go away.
Where the child is able to move to another place, we did that, and if you look at the bill, there's several steps that take place before that happens. And what we wanted to do was in a situation where the bully themselves is not being addressed. We don't want that person to just be trapped there and say, I can't afford to go anywhere else. There's nothing else for me to do. So we wanted to give them the option. They don't have to, but they have the option at a certain point to remove themselves from that situation.
But we can't be fooled into thinking that solves the problem.
No, absolutely
That's
not.
absolutely
That's
not a solution to the
That's
problem.
just a safeguard in case steps aren't taken to address the bully themselves.
It's a Band-Aid.
Now, also keep in mind.
Do you want to
that in the
add?
state
Yes.
We do.
No,
I'm
go ahead,
sorry.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, also keep in mind that in this state, we have adopted, again, the positive behavior intervention system. And it is designed to reward behavior that is appropriate, behavior that is in accordance with the expectations of a respectable society. But when there are persons who do not comply with those expectations, there are tiered interventions that take place, and it may involve group counseling. And if that does not help, then the next step would be one-on-one counseling. And if there needs to be some punitive measure put into place to deal with that behavior, then that's also done. It is a system that has been put into place, and again, when we use what we have effectively, we can address these issues. The resources are there.
Dr. Domingue, my appreciation is that there was not a counselor at Tisha's school. Is that correct?
Correct. That wasn't at all.
And so clearly you're hearing things that are making you think if this were in place, it might have made a difference.
Well, it might have made a difference, but like the gentleman said, he said about bullying continuously in the schools. But here my thing is, once again, if a person fights somebody, you suspend them, and they're gone for 3, 4, 5 days. I think that'll get the message, but you don't send them home so they can have a vacation. I think you need to put them into another situation where they're not in school, but you're teaching them how not to do the things that they're doing in the school. Then, if they do it again, you do it again. But then after the third time, there should be some type of situation that you need to put them in to make them understand what they're doing is wrong. And I think that if we continue to pamper these kids and tell them that, yeah, you know, it's all right to continue to do the stuff that you do, guess what? We're gonna have kids continue to do suicidal things like this young lady did and like my cousin did. I think you guys need to be aware that these bullies will continue to do the things they do, because guess what? If you constantly allowing them to do it, they're gonna do it. So it's gotta be some type of stipulation that we got to set to let these bullies know that, hey, we mean business.
Thank you. We were saying, though, there was no counselor. That's a deplorable situation, is it not, in a school?
I want to just point out, I think in Senator Ward's bill, I think that he has a process on the bullying. I don't think that what you're saying is that you want the intervention as well as you want to see some consequences behind the bullying. Well, you know, and some of the things that I've seen, that some of it's subjective. If the teacher doesn't identify it, and again, you know, talk with the principal, they don't have all the necessary materials now, but whatever they have, they're working towards it, because it's a very sensitive topic, okay? The reason why we're talking about it now is because it's bigger than what it used to be in previous years. And so now it's become an epidemic where it's so sensitive, even the bill is sensitive. So even the bill's going to have some type of loopholes that we're going to identify, because it's a subjective type of thing. You have to actually be trained to identify what the bullying is in order to identify if it is or not. And once the intervention process takes place, then those bullies that are being identified as that are able to actually go to these particular training classes, as such as the psychologist was saying, then we'll be able to have some effective results from it. But right now, it's a very sensitive thing. And we're implementing things right now so that in the long term that it can be something that we can grab onto, where it won't be such a national
If I may, and I hope I'm not out of line by saying this, but how much longer are we going to be sensitive, and how many more kids have to lose their lives before something truly takes place? I'm tired of talk. Okay, I've lost my 14-year-old daughter. I don't want another parent in this room to lose another child. And I agree with what you're saying. You know, we have to be very careful with the law. But how much more and how many have to lose their lives before we truly take a step in this world? It isn't just Louisiana, guys. It's just not Point Coupé Parish or whatever. You know, I'm very tired with talk. Let's get it. Let's walk. We will put a kid in jail for punching another child. And let me tell you something, you know, you talk about a fine line of bullying or not bullying, but when you got a child that is consistently going to the principal for the same thing over and over and over, and nothing is taking place, you have a problem with that principal, in my opinion. Why can't we remove the principal? If you won't remove the child, remove the problem that won't remove the problem. And I'm sorry, but I'm one of those parents that lost my child. And so I'm tired of the talk. And I appreciate what Senator's done, and I appreciate what you're doing here. But none of you sitting on this panel have been in my shoes. You can't replace my daughter. And it's time to get rid of the problem. I don't care if you're black, white, we all do it. It's time to take a stand, and dang it, if nobody else is going to, it's time for the parents. Put together something. Put together another package. I really do appreciate what he's done, but that's not going to bring my daughter back. And I don't want another parent to walk in my shoes.
And I'd like to follow up on what you just said there just a moment ago. I got a chance to sit in on the committee hearings, not on your bill, Senator Ward, but there was another bill, anti-bullying bill, that did not make it through the legislative session. But there were many students there who testified that they, in fact, had been bullied and that they had reported it many times over, and nothing was done. How is that addressed in your bill? And as an educator, Dr. Domain, is this something that you see? And how do you address that? I'll start with you, Senator Ward.
Well, that's what we tried to address with removing the child at the parent's request. If after repeated request for an investigation to be done, if nothing has taken place, instead of the child being stuck there, give them a way out, or give them a way to remove themselves from the bad situation.
But does that address the problem of a teacher not doing anything, or a principal not doing anything, or an administrator not taking action?
They'll be held accountable as well, but while they are being held accountable, we didn't want that person to continue to go through what they were going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then I mean, you know, you don't want to have mass exodus there. I mean, you know, so how do you deal with that? I mean, what's in process to help these teachers and administrators learn how to better handle these situations?
They're going to partake in, I guess, 2 days. I think it's 2 full days, or I don't remember it because it's been a while now. But it's a certain amount of time, significant amount of time of training to identify the actions that could be considered bullying and what steps they need to take. So it's more training that needs to take place. That's the start, and maybe there's something that we need to visit more in the future to tighten that area up. But we just, you know, we wanted to give them the ability to learn, or the opportunity to learn what truly is bullying, the steps they need to take if they see it happen, and then if none of those steps are taken, give the child an opportunity to move on.
Dr. Domain, do you see this as a real problem?
Anytime a child raises a concern and it is not addressed, yes, that's a problem. I can only surmise what's the cause of inaction. I'm concerned because I heard that at this school, Point Coupé Central, that there was no guidance counselor in the school. That's severe understaffing. And again, I can't account for it. I don't know. I know that at my school I am very fortunate to have staff available for me that can follow up immediately. And again, when a child raises a concern, it needs to be addressed immediately. I have staff that can assist me with that. The bill, the legislation has codified that. It has put time limits on it. So now while we are consumed with many things during the day as educators, as principals, as administrators, and so forth, there is now, I believe, a sense of urgency. You have to respond. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to call for some reshifting of some activities. There may be some appointments we can't take that day because now you have an accusation that has to be investigated.
Immediately, right?
Immediately.
That's in the bill, that it does have to be
that
addressed
is in the bill.
immediately. And this is called the Tisha Middlebrook Anti-Bullying Act. She attended a charter school, but your bill exempts charter schools, right?
I guess inadvertently it would exempt, it directly goes towards public schools. And I believe that was done, you know, if you attend a private school or a charter school, you already have the option to go and do something else. So it's much harder to regulate the private sector than it is the public. So we had to start somewhere, and that was our thought process.
Okay, we have a question from this gentleman. Give me your name and tell us where you're from.
Reverend George Molex III from Morganza, Louisiana. My question is for the psychologist. What contingencies and safeguard from research can be implemented to curtail bullying beyond the school grounds?
The real issue is not the victim. The real issue is not the bully. The issue is everybody else. We need to educate everybody else. That's where the power lies. The strength, the power behind an anti-bullying effort is in the silent majority. It's everybody else. We need to teach these kids tolerance and respect. We need to teach them about diversity. They need to learn to accept one another. We need to educate these children from the first day they walk into preschool on up. That's the way we're going to solve this problem in the schools, and that's the way we're going to solve the problem in society. It's a systemic problem. It's not one kid calling another kid a name. That's a symptom of the problem. The problem is systemic. We have got to do more diversity education. We have got to develop a culture of acceptance and tolerance. We are a melting pot in our society. We need to embrace that and celebrate that. And that's not happening. In fact, we're moving in the other direction. And that's what's causing this become such a great problem.
Dr. Domingue, we spoke earlier, and everyone is always putting the school in charge of the child's fate. And they exist in a world full of violent media and games where they can kill at will for 5 hours with a joystick. What is a student like who comes to your school now?
Students who come from backgrounds where violence is the norm, lack of care and respect for others is the norm, don't really know what is appropriate interaction with others. And it causes us to have to teach things that I believe in the past were just great American values: to respect one another, to keep your hands to yourself, to not say anything to anyone else that you wouldn't want said to yourself. We have to teach these things now. Our children are desensitized to bullying and to violence. We look at the shows that are on television now, even the reality shows. It used to be just the game shows, and we could say, oh, the video games are so lifelike now, and that's what's attributing to this seemingly decline in behavior. But the reality television shows that glorify bullying are what our children are enjoying, and what's being perpetuated as, you know, this is the way to be. A child coming to us now is very different from one who came to us 5 or 10 years ago. We are playing more the role of, you know, I'm not just an administrator. There are students at my school who call me mama, or, and when I was younger, big sister, or whatever it was that they needed. So they come to us with needs that go far beyond, I think, the classroom. And so we're having to be more equipped for that. We're having to be more equipped to bring social resources and to have the psychologists and social workers on our campus and available to our kids. We're having to adjust our level of responsibility and response to the needs of students because of their backgrounds.
Well, I have another student here who has a question for the panel. Give us your name and where you're from.
My name is Jasmine Littles. I'm from Zachary, Louisiana, and my question is for Mr. Banguel. It's a great idea to educate our students about the diversity of everyone, but clearly teenagers do not like to listen. They feel like they're over any administration and authority. So what do you think we can do in our schools to directly affect the bullies, to let them see that this is a major problem, and to allow them to see that this is something that clearly needs to be fixed, and for them to maybe back off?
We as teenagers, we hear one thing and then it goes out the other ear. You know, the principal may say, hey, you're doing something, you need to stop it. Yeah, we heard it today. Then Wednesday we get back into the environment again where it came from, and we get back into our ways. And again, I'm talking as a teenager, rather, looking on the other side of the coin. And being a teenager, we're going to be in a situation where we're in front of all our peers. There's no adults there. Okay, so when we're around an adult, we tend to act different. We tend to do things the correct way, but when we're around an environment, the thing is, and again, being a reform bully, quote unquote, the thing is that you want to be a person to not so much intimidate, rather. You want someone to say, hey, when you see that particular person coming up, you need to go the other way or not mess with them at all. And that's what some of the students have, that particular way of defining themselves as, hey, I want everyone to leave me alone.
Well, what did it take to change your behavior?
Well, again, what changed my behavior again was the fact that and my steps were a little different. My mom, again, was a single parent, so getting put out of school was enough for her, you know, and she was like, you know what, you getting put out too many times. And again, it didn't stop the problem of bullying, because at the time in high school, being on the basketball team and football team, of course, you have an entourage that seemed to come around you, where you do tend to try to mess with other students. Again, I didn't have any intent to bully them, or rather than it was just something I did because I was in high school. And again, in order to facilitate the facilitate the bill is that once we identify the problem, then we have our intervention. And again, it's now a national recognized epidemic now, and people are suffering from bullying. And so right now we're doing what we can, and Mr. Ward, Senator Ward, has implemented bills to take those proactive steps and to stopping all these cases of things that come from bullying.
Sounds to me like you had to grow up to change your ways.
Absolutely.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. Over to you, Shauna.
Thank you. Lynn, I'm really curious, taking in everything that you're hearing, and I know there are lots of parents out there who are watching and who are really trying to understand what would have helped your daughter. Is there anything that you've heard here, anything that hasn't been said, that could help a parent who's watching this tonight? What would have made the difference, you think?
You know, I think personally, if I would have just asked maybe a little bit, you know, I mean, we did everything together. You know, she rodeoed, she played volleyball, she played softball. I mean, there was nothing that she wasn't active in, but she always came home with that smile on her face. You know, we would go out to the farm and ride her horse or whatever. And I think maybe if I would have just said, or maybe asked a little bit more, hey, is there something underneath that smile? You know, nowadays, we really need to address with our kids, with everything going on. I never knew how bad bullying was until my daughter's death in October of 2011, because I never paid attention to it on the television. And now, since my daughter has died, I see it every day, all day long, and I read about it in papers, and it just, it blows me away as how ignorant we are to the television, that what's really taking place, until it happens to you, till it really hits home. And unfortunately for my daughter, through the volleyball at her school is whenever I really noticed it started. She was playing in front of some senior kids or junior kids, and it was the parents. And unfortunately, I'm one that's going to step up, and I'll tell you exactly how I feel. And I did ask a few parents, and it's not Hannah. It's just, you know, we don't feel the coaches. Well, then why are you directing this at my child? Go to the coach. But you know, they don't have the guts to do that. They're going to take this out on the children. And so what do I think could help it? You know, and again, I'm going to go back to what this gentleman said. I'm not attacking him, but you know, we go back to we need to define come on, guys and ladies, you know what bullying is. I mean, if it's just one little old word here and there that friends may do upon each other, that's fine. But 100 text messages to this girl that hung herself or killed herself, really? How long does this take place before you got to identify that as bullying?
Well, and I think
we know this.
I think that speaks to the type of bullying that goes on that can happen so quickly. And
everybody bullies. We do it to our kids and we do it to friends. But I mean, when it gets to a point to where it's to an extreme, it's different.
And we have a question along those lines. Give us your name. Tell us where you're from.
My name is Nicholas Living. I'm from Harvey, Louisiana, and my question is directed towards Dr. Domain. How can schools effectively regulate social interaction when it comes to cyberbullying without overstepping the boundaries of personal privacy?
Just for you, Dr. Domain.
He looks at me and says, good luck.
All of you can jump in on that one, but it's a big problem, cyberbullying.
It is. Cyberbullying is a problem, and there are so many outlets for them in cyberspace, them being our students in cyberspace, and they show me new ones every day. What we do have in our power to do is that when students